Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Tuesday. I hope the week is starting well. I'm sure it is. Wherever you're watching this around the world or listening, of course, via podcast, I'm sure you're all still basking in the glory of that North London derby win on Sunday. Fun day it was yesterday, I have to say. 43. I am. No, I'm not. Sorry. I'm 42. 42 years old I am. And I gleefully wore my Arsenal top, Arsenal jacket, proudly doing the school run, picking my kids up yesterday, just in the hope that any of the parents who I was walking past who were picking their kids up were Spurs fans. I didn't even know, but I just knew wearing my shirt. If they were a Spurs fan and they clocked me, I knew it'd just wind them right up. So 42 years old and I'm still doing that. But hey, I'm sure I'll still be doing it when I'm 80 as well. So look, I hope you're having a great week wherever you are watching or listening to this around the world. And what a big week it is. It started with that North London derby win. Got Atalanta in the Champions League on Thursday night over in Italy. And then the big one, the Premier League top of the table clash, Manchester City versus Arsenal on Sunday. So lots to discuss in today's show. We're going to look at that game on Thursday night and I suppose the game on Sunday and sort of work out what Mikel Arteta might do or could do or needs to do in terms of balancing his team selection. He's not got too many options because let's face it, most of the people who he could have brought in for this game are sidelined at the moment with injury. So he's not got the best options right now in terms of how he rotates his side to ensure that everyone can get through these 3 games in 7 days. But we will have a look at that. I'm going to talk about Gabriel as well and why I think he absolutely warrants a new contract. So yeah, plenty. Got loads of reaction from you guys as well who've been sending in your thoughts ahead of the game against Atalanta. But we're going to start on Gabriel, who look, first of all, there are contract discussions going on with Gabriel and Arsenal. Those started a while ago. As far as I'm aware, they were still fairly early discussions. I don't think they've been absolutely ramped up to the stage yet where it looks like something's going to get done, straight away. But there are discussions going on. They have started. Arsenal initiated those talks a while back, and they are ongoing as we speak. And from Gabriel's point of view, he absolutely, in my mind, warrants a new contract. And I'll tell you why. I mean, he signed his last deal in 2022. I said this yesterday. He was the first of the big renewal process that Arsenal started and have been working through. Gabriel kind of started that off when he got his new deal in 2022. Since then, everyone has kind of been systematically worked through and had those contracts signed. And now we're kind of back round to Gabriel again. And when you look at where Gabriel is now to where he is in 2022, and when you look at the type of contract William Saliba has signed fairly recently compared to the sort of contract Gabriel would have signed back in 2022, you can see why he absolutely warrants a new deal. And when Arsenal do these contracts, it's not about just doing it because of time or length. They're very, very keen to reward their players with a contract that their kind of performances and their stature in the team warrants. And again, when I go back to where Gabriel was in 2022 to where he is now, I mean, he is a firmly established player in this Arsenal team, crucial member of this Arsenal team, one of the best centre-backs in world football, as part of one of the best centre-back partnerships in world football, in my opinion, the best centre-back partnership in world football. His centre-back partner is on a lot of money. Gabriel would have seen that. Gabriel's representatives would have seen that when William Saliba got that new contract, and will quite rightly be saying to Arsenal during these talks, which at the moment are going on, say, well, he's on this. These two are a pair. They're a brilliant partnership. There's similar, Gabriel's a little bit older, but is still a top player, and there will be plenty of clubs. I don't know who, but there will be plenty of clubs who will be keeping an eye on Gabriel. Of course, there will. Any good centre back in the world, especially a left-footed centre back in the world who's so good in the air at scoring goals at the other end, all the top clubs in the world will want him, and they will be well aware of that. So they're going to be in a very strong position in terms of negotiating with Arsenal. But he does warrant a new contract. I am absolutely convinced of it. And I spoke about it yesterday. William Saliba gets all the headlines, and he's an unbelievable centre back, William Saliba. But Gabriel does go under the radar with a lot of people, not so much Arsenal fans, but with a lot of people outside of the club who kind of all focus on William Saliba. Gabriel goes very much under the radar. He's hugely underrated. So he's turned into an absolutely fantastic centre back who, as I said, is part of this wonderful partnership, who scores so many goals at the other end. And Arsenal need to ensure that he is tied down for a long, long time at this club. We saw what happened with the interest from Saudi Arabia only a year ago, that understandably turned Gabriel's head a little bit because of the money that he was going to be offered there. is just unbelievable, astronomical money, so much more than what he's on at Arsenal. And what Arsenal could offer with his new contract is not going to be Saudi Arabia money. That's just impossible. But they need to reward him with a contract that he deserves and hits the sort of level of pay that I think his stature and his quality, not just in Arsenal, but in world football now, deserves. He's a starting centre back for Brazil as well. So, yeah, loving what Gabriel is doing at Arsenal. It's been fantastic to watch. But, yeah, I absolutely think he warrants a new contract. Let me know your thoughts on it all in the comments below. Right, moving on to the Atlanta game. Some interesting choices coming up for Mikel Arteta, I think, when it comes to team selection. We've got the Bukayo Saka injury stroke cramp concern, obviously limped off against Spurs at the weekend. What do you do with Bukayo Saka? Is this the game, considering you got Sunday at Spurs, Thursday night in Italy with all the travel, then you're coming back, and then you've got that huge game against Manchester City. It's a difficult situation because this is the first game of Arsenal's Champions League campaign, and they're not playing a nobody. They're playing Atalanta. They're playing the reigning Europa League champions who smashed Bayer Leverkusen in the final last year. Atalanta are a very, very good side, a very dangerous side. They score goals. They really attack teams. Arsenal are going to have to be absolutely on it. And you don't want to start your Champions League campaign with a really poor result and a bad defeat. So it's not a case of just resting everyone for Manchester City because you're going to be able to breeze past Atalanta. Unfortunately, that is not going to be the case. It's going to be an incredibly difficult game for Arsenal at a ground that is going to be absolutely bouncing to see their team in the Champions League. It's going to be a really intense atmosphere. So you can't just play the kids. It's not going to be a case of Wanyeri starting, Miles Lewis-Skelly starting, Aidan Heaven starting. That's it's not a Carabao Cup game. It's a Champions League game. And it's one that's really, really important. So it's a fine balancing act for Mikel to make. But I do think that you obviously have to take Man City into account. And I would be resting Bukayo Saka in this game, I have to say. I'm maybe bringing on for half an hour in the second half, but I wouldn't be starting Bukayo in this game. I think you've got to rest some, and I think he'd be one. I'd be resting Yuri and Timber as well. That was the first 90 minutes Yuri and Timber has completed for Arsenal since he signed for the club, a competitive 90 minutes anyway, since he signed for the club because of that injury. I thought he was excellent, but I wouldn't want to take another risk on Yuri and Timber, so I'd be giving him a bit of a break. Obviously, Declan Rice, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this picture of Declan Rice yesterday at the Emirates Stadium taking part in a catwalk for London Fashion Week, which is very, very interesting. Says he's a big into his fashion. Declan Rice said after football it might well be something he gets into, and he took full advantage of having the opportunity to do the catwalk. He's obviously back available, and I'd be playing Declan on Thursday, even though obviously he's going to play against Man City as well. He had a bit of a rest. He didn't play in the North London derby. He's got an unbelievable engine on him, Declan Rice, and I'd have no issues with him playing on Thursday night and then playing on the Sunday. And then you've got the choice to make in terms of Gabriel Jesus, Raheem Sterling, who's going to come in for this game. You would expect at least one of those two would start. I wouldn't be surprised if both of those players starts as well. So there's lots of decisions for Mikel Arteta to make in terms of the Thursday night game, and he's got to get it right. Getting the balance right between the team on Thursday that can still go out and perform and hopefully get the result that Arsenal need, but then also protecting a few players for that crucial game at Manchester City as well. And when you think Man City are playing at home on Wednesday night, so they get an extra day to prepare and they don't have any travel, puts them at a huge advantage for Sunday already. So that's why Arsenal have got to get the decisions right when it comes to the game. I've asked for your opinions. Lots of you have sent them in since yesterday, so thank you very much for that. I'm going to rattle through some of them right now. You've got Still Jolloff says, personally, I would rest Saka. I'm confident we still have enough to get a result away at Atalanta. Last season, we faced an identical situation when Saka picked up a slight niggle against Bournemouth. Yet we started him in the following match against Rennes, and he ended up getting injured. We can't afford to repeat the same mistake. Some may point that we managed to beat City without him last season, but I've argued that was down to luck, as the game is at the Emirates, not at the Etihad like this one. We simply can't take that risk again. One Nation says, yes, I would rest Saka and replace him with Raheem Sterling. I would also keep Jorginho in the team, giving Rice an additional rest as he played a lot of games like Saka for England in the European Championships. Some more now. Here's one at the top. Says start Trossard, Nelly, Sterling, and Jesus. Rest Havertz and Saka. Non-flying Iceman says great stuff. Agree with all the ratings too. That's a not an often a comment that I get too often. I'm hoping that Sterling and Martinelli start and Saka, Trossard on the bench against Atalanta. Also, Nwaneri gets more minutes there too, as he looked very confident on the ball and played some very neat forward passes. Yeah, interesting about the Nwaneri. I'd be fine with Nwaneri starting this game. Um, Especially next to Declan Rice, if that was the case. And then you could potentially play Havertz up front if you wanted to, or you could play Jesus and rest Havertz. So, I'd have no issue. I thought Nwaneri, that cameo against Tottenham, he was confident on the ball. And I'd have no issue starting him in this Champions League game. I don't think Arteta will, I have to admit, but I would have no issue with it happening. Taj says, I wonder what Arteta's plans are for Raheem. With Odegaard missing, I think it's important to keep Saka on the field, as he's very important for the right-hand side. With Rice back for this one, I think Raheem and Rice could merge on with a good understanding, but I also hope we will see Jesus playing. I can't remember how Jesus and Raheem got on at City, I presume, but I'm sure they understand each other. Yes, and Avenge Sevenfold says, I'd love Ethan getting more minutes with Odegaard missing, and these 2 games we play in 3 days. He was brilliant, showed confidence in the most hostile environment in the league. I really believe he can prove what a generational talent he is against a side like Atalanta. Final cup here, one from Vet Paris. Says, players I think need a rest versus Atalanta the most. Timber after playing first full game post-injury. Partey after playing 2 full games for Ghana and the entire NLD. Martinelli, who's been absolute workhorse and has had to carry all the blame for the distribution on the left-hand side post-Xhaka leaving. Saka, just because he always plays, and Sterling, it's the first time in 3 seasons we have a proper backup. So your team is Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Kivior, Jorginho, Rice, Havertz, Sterling, Jesus, and Trossard. He said, given the lack of turnaround to Sunday, this is the one game of the season I would rotate as hard as I can. James says, rest Saka, Havertz, and Timber. I'd want us to give Miles a run out at left back midfield, if not Kivior. So lots of interesting stuff there from you guys. Thank you very much, as always, for sending it in. I've put together the team that right now I'm leaning towards. This isn't my predicted 11. This is not what I think Arteta's going to do. We'll get to that later on in the week. But just right now, as we're a couple of days away from it, I'm going to go down to London Colney tomorrow at the Shoba Realty Centre, London Colney, whatever. It's always going to be London Colney to me. But I'm going down there tomorrow for the open training session. I'm not flying out to Atlanta tomorrow. I'm not making the trip over to Italy for this game, but I'll be at the training ground tomorrow to do the open training. It'll be interesting who's training. I'll get a good look there. Will we see Zinchenko back, for example? What's going on with Martin Odegaard? I'm not expecting to see Martin Odegaard, I have to say, but you never know. Stranger things have happened in football. So I should get a really good update tomorrow in terms of who is available and who is going to be making that trip to Italy. But right now, as it stands, this is a side that I'm kind of leaning towards. And so it's Raya in goal. Obviously, the back 3, I think the back 4, it's going to be White, Saliba, Gabriel. I think they'll definitely all start. And then I'm going with Kivior as the left back. Obviously, there has been the shout there for Miles Lewis-Skelly. It's an option. We know that Arteta is basically looking to use him there. You look at what he's done with him in pre-season when he's been playing for the 21s. I'm going to go with Jorginho as the holding midfielder for this one. I agree with, I think it was Vet Para's comments, that I just think Thomas Partey, having played both games for Ghana in international break, coming back, playing the full North London derby, I'd be resting Thomas for this one. I just think it's really, really important. He's had he's slowly getting himself really, really fit right now, Thomas Partey, and you've got to be really careful. We know you've got to be really careful with Thomas. So I'd be resting him for this game ahead of the Man City one. So I'd play Jorginho. I'd bring Rice back into the team. I've gone with Havertz next to him. I do like the idea of starting Nwaneri for this game. But it's just such a big game. It's you really want to start your Champions League with a win. I'd probably play Havertz instead, just. And then I'm resting Saka, so I'm playing Sterling on the right. I'm having Jesus as a striker, and I'm playing Martinelli on the left. So resting Trossard for this one, because I think Trossard will probably play against Manchester City at the weekend. So that's the 11 right now that I'm leaning towards. I'm probably going to change my mind by the end of today, certainly by tomorrow. And like I said, it'll be interesting to see what sort of insight I get down at the training ground tomorrow in terms of who is going to be making this trip to Italy for Arsenal. But it's a big one for Mikel. As I said, it's going to be really interesting. And he's got some big decisions to make. It's a tough week for him. He started it really, really well with that win against Spurs, and now it's about trying to get through these two away games with two, good results. A lot of people say I'm being defeatist. I think if Arsenal got a draw in these next two games, if you offered me right now a draw in Atalanta and a draw at Manchester City, I would take it. I have to say, obviously, I wouldn't want that. I'd much rather two wins, 100%, or a draw and a win. But I think right now, if Arsenal drew the next two games, I don't think you could look at that and say that is a bad set of results at all, given who's out at the moment. If you can go win at Spurs, start your Champions League campaign with a really good draw away from home, and then go to the Etihad and not lose, I think that would be a very, very good week for Arsenal, I have to say. But obviously, I would much rather another win or two wins in there. So let's wait and see, shall we? But let me know what your thoughts on anything I've discussed on this show in terms of Gabriel's contract. How important is it that Arsenal get that deal over the line for Gabriel in terms of who you think could start on Thursday? Anything I've said, anything you've agreed with, disagreed with, let me know in the comments below. I'm not sure yet about my plans for tomorrow's video. I don't think I'm going to do one before I go to the training ground. I'm supposed to be there by 10:30, so I'm going to have to set off pretty early for that. And there's no point me doing one before the training session, really, because by the time I then do the training session, everything I've spoken about might be out of date because there'll be new updates in terms of who's fit and who might be traveling and things like that. So I think I'll wait until the training session is over, and then I'll try and do a video either from the training ground or once I get back home. So it might be a little bit later tomorrow when the show does eventually come out. So until then, everyone have a very good Tuesday, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.